Okay, so my classes are usually going to use this as more like a warm-up, but I'm going to walk you through seems really silly, but there are two things that I do for a reason. The first is that I don't rewrite that as a cubic function and leave it factored like that for a reason. And the second is that this first example is super, super easy because I simply want to make sure you follow the correct order of ops. The order of operations that we use for this easy example are going to be the same no matter how messy the example. So remember, step one is, of course, to plug 3 into your equation everywhere there is an x. And then according to PEMDAS, the next thing that we would do is we would square that 3 that's inside the parentheses, and so it would become a 9. And then we could finish simplifying inside the parentheses by doing our subtracting, because it's inside parentheses. Remember, normally subtraction doesn't come first. And then we can do our multiplying. And so for the most part, we want to stick with that same order of operations for the other 3 examples. Okay, now I want to remind you guys of something. On a couple of these, where I'm going to plug in this one right here, 2 plus I, plugged it in for the first x, and then the second x, the one inside the parentheses, is being squared. And so I want to remind you that on this one, and there's another example like this is a binomial. Let me show you. This right here is a binomial that's being squared. You're going to have to FOIL. And so if you need to jump off to the side and FOIL, then take a second and do that. Okay? The other thing you're going to have to remember is you're going to have to remember how to simplify radicals and how to simplify imaginary numbers. So if I jump off here to the side and I do 2 plus I squared, okay, because remember we're following the same order of ops as this one right here, so we're going to do our squaring first. So when I FOIL, my first terms give me 4, outer terms give me 2i, inner terms give me 2i, and the last terms give me I squared. Okay, so a couple of things. First, the 2i's will add, give you 4i, and secondly, I'm hoping that a fair number of you remember that I squared is -1. I'm giving you a second to realize, to try and recall that unit that you did. And so what that means is that I can combine it with the 4 that was in front, and that's what I get when I do my FOILing. Okay, so what that means is back up here at the original problem, we haven't done anything with this 2 plus I out here, but inside the parentheses, our squaring gave us 3 plus 4i. Okay, so then the next thing we did in the parentheses was we did our subtraction. So we combined our like terms. And so when we combine our like terms here, we have -1 plus 4i, or 4i minus 1, however you want to write that. And then we FOIL one more time. So I'm going to give you guys a second to try that for yourselves. Okay, so hopefully you paused it and you took a second and did your FOILing. And if you didn't pause it, you can pause it now, because I'm about to show you the answer. So when we FOIL this out, we get -2 for the first terms. Our outer terms give me 8i, and my inner terms give me -1i, and my last terms give me plus 4i squared. So what's going to happen here is 2 things. The first is, of course, that the i's will combine and just give you 7i. And then the second thing is that that I squared is -1, but it was being multiplied to a 4. So that means this is just going to become a -4 instead of a +4. And so what we get is we get negative 6 plus 7i when we evaluate that polynomial with a complex number inside of it. Okay, so same equation. I just copied and pasted it again so we could see the equation on both slides. And now we're going to evaluate these two. Okay, so remember, step one is what? Plug in. Okay, so I'm going to do that for both of them. So I'm going to plug the x over 2 in. Okay, so step one was to plug in, and then you go in the order of PEMDAS. Now, this example right here, C, actually has 2 or 3 different versions of a correct answer because you do have choices as to what order you go in after a certain point. So we'll discuss all those in just a minute. This one, not so much. You really do want to stick with your order of ops, especially doing the squaring first. And this one's going to require foiling again, because if you look right here, that's a binomial that's being squared. Okay. Okay, so if you jump off to the top up here and you do your foiling, your first terms will give you 9. Your outer terms and inner terms will both give you negative 3 square root of 2. So hopefully with enough practice you can just do those outer and inner terms and combine them. And then your last terms, negative times negative is positive, and square root of 2 times square root of 2 is 2. So that means over here where we get the answer from the foiling part, we just get 11 minus 6 square root of 2. But don't forget there's also a minus 4 in there that we haven't dealt with yet. Okay? And so at that point what I would have is when I do my next step and combine my like terms inside my brackets, I would have 7 minus 6 square root of 2. And the reason you really want to stick in the order of PEMDAS in this case is because this way you can just never have to do more than FOIL. You don't have to do long multiplication or long distributive property. Okay, so now I can FOIL again. First terms give me 21. Outer terms give me minus 18 square root of 2. Inner terms give me minus 7 square root of 2. And then the last terms, negative and negative is positive. Square root of 2 and square root of 2 is 2 times the 6 that was already there. So that means that this is just going to be a 12. And so then we can combine our like terms. We have the 21 out front and the 12 at the end, so we get 33. And then minus 18 square root of 2 minus 7 square root of 2 is minus 25 square root of 2. Okay? Now, C is the easier example because you have a couple of different options available to you. You still want to square first, so I'm going to leave that alone. This is just going to become x squared over 4 when I square it. Okay? So, let's say I want to stick in the same order of operations as all the other examples. So then the next thing I'd want to do is the subtraction. So that means I'm going to turn this 4 right here into 16 over 4 so that I have a common denominator and can do the subtraction. And so that would give me x squared minus 16 over 4. And then I can multiply. Remember, when you multiply fractions, you just multiply straight across. So numerators. So I'm going to take this x and distribute it through my quadratic, so it becomes x cubed minus 16x, and then multiply straight across the denominators and get 8, and that's it. That's the answer. Now the other option you had was back here. Instead of doing the subtraction next, what you could have done, I'm going to make a little room here. Okay. What you could have done is you would have gone from here. You would have simply distributed through. And so when you distributed to the first part, you would have had two fractions to multiply together, and you would have gotten x cubed over 8 minus. And then when you distribute to the second part, you would have had 4x over 2, which just reduces to 2x. So this and this are both correct. They're both acceptable. They're equivalent to each other, and it doesn't matter which one you give me. Okay, so that's it for today. Okay, hope it's going okay so far.